The courage to face your inner darkness, Carl Jung. You will think of yourself as strong, enlightened, healed perhaps. But what if I told you that your greatest light still hides behind the very darkness you refuse to face? That your calm smile, your self-control, your spiritual glow are sometimes just masks protecting you from the shadows whispering beneath your skin. Every woman carries within her a hidden chamber. Some call it the subconscious, others the soul. Jung called it the shadow, the unacknowledged part of you that holds not only shame and fear, but also your unclaimed power, your untamed love, your buried rage, your forbidden desires. It is not evil. It is simply the truth you cannot bear to see. From a young age, she learns to be good, to be soft, kind, agreeable. The world teaches her that safety comes from being loved, and love comes from being pleasing. So she fragments. One part becomes light, polite, patient, accommodating. The other, dark, demanding, wild, unapologetic. She buries this darkness, afraid that if anyone sees it, she will be rejected. Yet it is this very burial that makes her restless at night, that draws her into the same patterns again and again. Men who mirror her unhealed wounds, choices that replay her unspoken fears. In the quiet hours when the mask slips, she feels it, the ache of something untamed pressing at the edges of her consciousness. It is not madness, it is memory. The soul remembers what the ego forgets. The woman who silences her own roar cannot truly rest. She only pretends to. The feminine spirit longs for wholeness, not perfection, and wholeness demands that she turn toward what she has exiled within herself. To face one's shadow is not to declare war on it. It is to listen, to ask, why are you here? What do you need me to see? The answers are rarely gentle. The shadow speaks in storms. It exposes the wounds you have romanticized, the dependencies you've spiritualized, the love you've mistaken for salvation. But through that storm, clarity emerges. You begin to see that every rejection was an initiation, every heartbreak a mirror showing you the part of yourself you still abandoned. Jung said that the process of individuation, of becoming whole, requires descending into the depths of the unconscious. It is a journey of a Nana who descended into the underworld stripped of all adornments. It is the crucifixion of the false self, the death of illusions. You cannot become who you truly are without meeting who you've been pretending not to be. Modern women often call this healing, but it is older than any therapy. It is alchemical. The darkness is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to transform you. In alchemy, lead is the base material, heavy and dense, but within it lies the potential for gold. So too in the psyche, your rage, jealousy, loneliness, guilt, all are the raw materials for your awakening. But transformation does not occur by wishing. It begins with the courage to see. Courage, in its truest sense, means to speak from the heart. And to face your inner darkness, you must do exactly that. Speak from the heart of your fear, your grief, your longing. It is not easy. The ego resists. It wants control, not surrender. It wants light without shadow, peace without chaos, love without vulnerability. Yet the soul knows there is no sunrise without night. The moment a woman stops running from her darkness, something ancient shifts inside her. She stops trying to fix herself and begins to remember herself. The fractured parts start to whisper again. The angry girl, the jealous lover, the controlling mother, the grieving child, all of them return not to haunt her, but to be held. For years, she chased love from others, unaware that these exiled fragments were her true lovers, waiting patiently for her to come home. And so the work begins, not glamorous, not loud. It happens in silence, in tears, in the moments she finally allows herself to feel without judgment. The world may see her withdraw and call it loneliness, but what they do not see is a sacred reunion taking place within her. The light embracing the dark, the conscious meeting the unconscious. This is the essence of shadow work, not destruction, but integration. When she stops dividing herself, the world around her softens. The men she attracts change. The energy she carries deepens. Because she no longer projects her disowned darkness onto others. She holds it within herself with grace. To face your inner darkness is to meet the truth that no one else can rescue you. There is no savior, no validation, no apology that can fill the void left by self-abandonment. The descent is yours alone. But on the other side of that descent lies something the ego cannot imagine: freedom. Not the freedom of escaping pain, but the freedom of being whole enough to hold it. And when that happens, the woman no longer fears a reflection in others. She no longer hides from her emotions or her needs. She becomes the embodiment of what Jung called the self, the union of opposites, the marriage of light and dark, the divine feminine, fully awake, no longer seeking completion in another. Because the truth is, darkness, when faced with courage, becomes light. There comes a time when the woman who once feared her shadow begins to see beauty in it. What once appeared monstrous now reveals itself as misunderstood. The rage she buried was never evil. It was a voice of her boundaries, strangled by years of pleasing others. The jealousy she despised was not weakness. It was a cry of a heart that longed to be seen and chosen. The grief she resisted was not punishment. It was proof that she once loved deeply, that she still can. The feminine darkness, when approached with reverence, becomes a teacher. It teaches her to discern between love and attachment, between being wanted and being valued. It shows her the subtle ways she betrays herself. When she says yes while her body screams no, when she gives to be needed instead of giving to express her fullness, when she mistakes intensity for intimacy. The shadow reveals not just what she hides, but what she's forgotten: her sacred authority over her own energy. Carl Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is the work of the mature feminine, not to chase perfection, but to become conscious. Conscious of the ways she repeats her mother's pain, conscious of how she diminishes herself to maintain harmony, conscious of how she projects her unlived desires onto men, calling them soulmates when they are really messengers. Every man she has ever loved was, in truth, a mirror. The ones who ignored her reflected her own neglect. The ones who controlled her mirrored the parts of her that feared her own power. The ones who left reminded her of the love she abandoned within herself. To awaken, she must stop presenting the mirrors and start reading them. The universe is not cruel. It is exact. It sends the people that show you what you have refused to acknowledge. So she begins to reclaim what she projected. The passion she once sought in others, she cultivates within. The validation she once begged for, she gives to herself. Slowly, she realizes that the world has always been responding to her own vibration. Not her words, not her wishes, but her energy. And energy cannot lie. If she vibrates from fear, she attracts teachers in the shape of chaos. If she vibrates from self-trust, she draws peace. Shadow work, in essence, is energy work, but not the kind spoken in spiritual cliches. It is the alchemy of honesty. It asks her to sit in her contradictions without shame, to admit that she craves love yet fears intimacy, that she wants freedom yet clings to control, that she seeks healing yet avoids pain. This brutal honesty cracks her open, but through those cracks, light enters. The Stoics, too, understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." His words echo the same truth Jung pointed toward. Liberation begins when you stop resisting what is. To face your shadow is not to dramatize it, nor to dissolve into it. It is to see it, hold it, and then act from consciousness, not compulsion. The shadow loses its power not when it is destroyed, but when it is named. This process humbles her. For the first time, she understands that no one is purely victim or villain. The parts of herself she condemned, the manipulative, the insecure, the jealous, were simply trying to survive. They did not need punishment. They needed understanding. And so she softens. Her compassion grows, not only for herself, but for everyone. She sees that others are also acting from their shadows, projecting their pain as she once did. Yet compassion does not mean tolerance of harm. It means clarity. She no longer confuses empathy with self-sacrifice. She can love someone and still walk away. She can forgive without forgetting. This balance between softness and strength. That is the mark of a woman who has met her darkness. In this stage of transformation, her external world may begin to crumble. Relationships fall away. Old habits die. Identities she once clung to feel foreign. It is a shedding before rebirth. Like the snake, she must lose the old skin to grow. Each ending is sacred, for it clears space for authenticity. But as the outer layers dissolve, something luminous begins to rise within. It is not confidence in the shallow sense. It is a deep-rooted calm, the knowing that she can face whatever comes because she has already faced herself. The feminine spirit, once fragmented, now stands integrated. She no longer needs to prove, perform, or please. She simply is. And that presence, grounded, magnetic, unbothered, is the true radiance of a woman who has met her shadow. It is the beauty that does not beg to be seen. It is the strength that does not announce itself. For now she knows, light is not the absence of darkness. It is the mastery of it. As she travels deeper into herself, she begins to see how every wound was never random. Each pain carried intelligence. The betrayal that shattered her was not meant to break her spirit, but to break her illusions. The loneliness that haunted her was not punishment, but initiation, a sacred space where the soul demanded solitude to rebuild its truth. Nothing was wasted. Every heartbreak, every silence, every loss was a teacher dressed in shadow. This is the hidden order of the psyche. The conscious mind calls it chaos. The unconscious calls it guidance. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the compass pointing toward integration. Yet, most people spend their entire lives running from it, building identities out of distraction. They chase validation, love, achievement, spirituality, anything to avoid sitting in the dark. But the darkness waits patiently. It knows that one day, the noise will no longer be enough. When that day arrives, the woman sits still. She no longer runs. She no longer bargains with the universe for an easier path. She begins to descend willingly, not into despair, but into truth. And truth, by nature, strips away what is false. She sees how much of her life was shaped by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being too much, fear of not being enough, fear of losing control, fear of being forgotten. Every decision, every relationship, every silence, echoes of fear disguised as virtue. In that recognition, the feminine awakens not as victim, but as sovereign. The throne of sovereignty is built from surrender. The paradox is brutal. Only by kneeling before her own darkness does she rise into her power. She realizes that to be powerful does not mean to dominate. It means to be whole. Wholeness is not clean. It is wild, unpredictable, and human. It bleeds, it weeps, it forgives, it rages, yet it stays rooted in awareness. To face the shadow is to meet the God within, not as a figure worship, but as an essence, the divine consciousness that observes both pain and peace without attachment. Jung called this the self, the totality of being that transcends the ego's limited story. The ego wants control, the self seeks harmony. The ego judges, the self integrates. When a woman aligns with herself, she no longer fears the dark because she recognizes it as part of her divine architecture. But awakening is not glamorous. It is dismantling. It is nights of tears that cleanse not only sorrow but illusion. It is trembling with anger and choosing not to project it outward. It is forgiving without needing closure. It is choosing silence when ego wants to explain. It is 1,000 tiny deaths. The death of control, of certainty, of who she thought she should be. And then, something extraordinary happens. She begins to feel life again, raw, vivid, untamed. The colors return. Food tastes richer. Music touches deeper. Her laughter, once polite, now roars from her belly. The feminine energy, once caged by fear, begins to flow. Sensual, creative, intuitive. Not the performance of femininity, but the embodiment of it. It is power wrapped in softness, chaos held in grace. She becomes magnetic, not because she tries to attract, but because she radiates authenticity. The universe responds. Opportunities appear not as coincidences, but as mirrors of her vibration. People sense her presence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that commands respect without a word. She has become a vessel of depth. Those who are not ready to meet themselves will find her intimidating. Those who are awake will find her sacred. Still, the shadow does not disappear. It remains silent, integrated, loyal. It becomes her ally, her intuition, her truth-teller. When she betrays herself, the shadow whispers. When she doubts her worth, it reminds her. When she starts to hide again, it rises, not to punish but to realign. The relationship between the conscious and unconscious becomes a dance, not of dominance, but of dialogue. In this sacred dance, she learns a rhythm of balance, action and rest, giving and receiving, speaking and listening. The divine feminine does not seek constant light. She honors the cycle of death and rebirth within herself. She understands that every season of darkness is preparing her for a greater expansion. The moon, after all, does not fear its own phases. And perhaps this is the ultimate courage, not to conquer the darkness, but to live with it gracefully, to know that both her tenderness and her fire belong, to accept that healing is not a final destination, but a rhythm. Inhale and exhale, rise and fall, light and shadow. This acceptance is liberation. It is no longer about fixing what is broken, but embracing what is real. And when a woman reaches this state, the world around her shifts. She becomes a quiet revolution, not through rebellion, but through presence. Because nothing is more powerful than a woman who has made peace with her own darkness. In the stillness that follows, she begins to understand what real peace feels like. Not the fragile calm that comes from avoidance, but the unshakable serenity born from truth. The noise of the world still exists, but it no longer dictates her inner weather. Opinions lose their grip. Validation becomes irrelevant. She has faced herself and found something greater than approval. She has found self-respect. This is the quiet aftermath of transformation. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or applause. It moves like dawn, soft, inevitable. She wakes each morning and senses a different quality of light in her being. It is not happiness, exactly, but clarity, a steady flame that no longer flickers with every gust of emotion. The woman who once needed to be chosen now chooses. She chooses peace over drama, solitude over noise, truth over comfort. This choosing is not arrogance. It is reverence for her time, her energy, her spirit. She no longer seeks intensity to feel alive. She is life. Every breath, every silence, every gesture carries depth. Men who once confused her now appear transparent. The ones who love her reflection but not her reality fade into the background, for she has become too real for illusions. The magnetic power of the awakened feminine no longer comes from seduction, but from presence. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. Her energy speaks a language of self-worth, and only those fluent in respect can understand it. Jung believed that the greatest tragedy of modern humanity was our refusal to look inward. In that refusal, we become fragmented, ruled by our projections, living half-lived lives. But when a woman faces her inner darkness, she breaks this cycle, not just for herself, but for the collective. The feminine psyche, healed and integrated, becomes a force of restoration. Where she walks, others begin to awaken. Her presence calms chaos. Her silence disarms manipulation. Her compassion exposes falseness. She no longer fights the world. She transforms it simply by existing in truth. The light she carries is not born from denial, but from depth. The shadow has been integrated, and therefore, it no longer controls her reactions. She acts from awareness, not wound. This is a mature feminine, not the girl seeking to be rescued, but the woman who has rescued herself. She understands now that wholeness is not about always being strong. It is about allowing softness without collapsing, allowing grief without despair, allowing desire without shame. The integrated woman holds contradictions with ease. She is both calm and passionate, nurturing and assertive, intuitive and logical. She no longer lives in extremes because she no longer fears her complexity. The world often misunderstands this kind of woman. They call her cold when she is simply clear. They call her intimidating when she refuses to shrink. They call her distant when she is discerning, but she no longer explains. Explanation was the language of her old self, the one who needed to be understood to feel safe. The woman who has embraced her darkness needs no justification. Her existence is her statement. There is a sacred solitude that follows such awakening. She does not isolate, but she cherishes her own company. Solitude becomes sanctuary, not punishment. In the quiet, she communes with her soul, listens to its rhythm, follows its guidance. She realizes that intuition was never lost, only drowned out by noise. Now it speaks again, clear and constant, like a river flowing through her chest. And so she begins to live not by reaction, but by resonance. She no longer asks, "What should I do?" but "What feels aligned?" This is divine feminine leadership, not control, but coherence. She leads through embodiment, not effort. Others feel her energy and remember something ancient within themselves. The permission to be whole, the courage to face one's inner darkness is not a single act. It is a lifelong devotion to truth. There will still be moments of doubt, fear, anger, but she no longer sees them as regressions. They are simply reminders, portals calling her back to herself. She meets them with the tenderness of an old friend. When darkness returns, she does not panic. She lights a candle, breathes, and listens. She knows now, what once terrified her was never the dark itself. It was her resistance to it. And in that realization, the darkness softens. It is no longer an enemy, but a lover. This is the art of integration, to hold both pain and peace in the same heart. To know that every descent is followed by rebirth. To understand that true light does not shine instead of the dark, but through it. And perhaps this is the wisdom that the feminine was always meant to remember. She was never broken, only divided. The darkness was never her punishment, but her passage, the sacred tunnel through which she will remember her own divinity. She smiles now not because life is easy, but because she is free. The woman who has faced her inner darkness no longer fears the unknown, for she is the unknown, the mystery, the moon, the sacred cycle. The woman who understands her worth does not chase. She chooses.